Hi everyone, Mark here from Voiceflow, and in this video we're going to show you how you can build a Telegram bot using the Dialog Manager API. The Dialog Manager API lets you run a Voiceflow experience with your own custom interface, giving users the flexibility to build for a specific chatbot in this case. To best walk you through this tutorial, we are going to use a previously created project named Telegram API. Let's explain what's happening in this project. When you start this experience, we are going to hear the assistant say a welcome message, "Welcome to Voiceflow." Then we have 4 intents. The first intent is the hello world intent, which is triggered when the user responds with hi or hello. Once initiated, the hello world intent will respond with a message, hello Flowster, display an image, play an audio clip, and then listen for another intent. Next, we have the pizza intent, which tests how the variable is managed between Telegram and Voiceflow using the Dialog Manager API. Then we have the buy intent, which signals the end of the experience. And then finally, we have the none intent, which is a fallback intent. This is triggered when the assistant can't recognize a user's response, or in other words, the fallback intent helps you handle unexpected utterances or when a customer says something that doesn't map to any intents in your skill. Let's now talk about Voiceflow's Dialog Manager API, which we will be using to add our Voiceflow project to a chat interface. The Dialog Manager API is available on our website, which we have linked to in the description below. Once you're on this page, the first thing that we need to know is the endpoint. The endpoint is the general-runtime.voiceflow.com. The next thing that we need to know is the authentication. For the authentication, we have to set an authorization header with the API key. Now, how do I get that API key? Well, it's very easy. You just need to go to your workplace settings and then click on the Developer tab and then hit Create API Key. And as you can see, we've already created one for our Telegram bot. Now, once again, you'll need to put that API key as an authorization header in order to interact with the API. Next, we have the Stateful API and the Stateless API. For this example, we're going to use the Stateful API. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus our attention on the interact endpoint, making a post request. To initiate an interact call using the Dialog Manager API, we need a few things such as the version ID. The version ID is the ID that you can find in your Voiceflow project's URL between a project / and a / canvas. Since this is a stateful API, you now need to set up a user ID. This means you can manage multiple conversations with multiple users at the same time, because each conversation has its own state. If we apply this to our Telegram bot example, this means the user ID that Telegram gets for us using the Telegram API will be unique to each individual user using the instant messaging software. To execute a successful call to interact with your Voiceflow project, the endpoint or the URI that we are going to use is the endpoint general-runtime.voiceflow.com, then /state /version ID, that's what we get from our project, /user /user ID /interact. And so this serves as our post request. Now we have to set up a body as well. The body is just an object called request that has 2 fields. The first one is the type, and the second one is the payload. For the type, there are 3 things: launch, text, and intent. When we start the conversation, we're going to send the request with a type launch. After that, we are going to send the user input that we have received from Telegram to Voiceflow. Then we will send a second request, which will be a text type request, along with a payload. For the payload, we are going to set the message or the user input. In order to give a more detailed explanation of the Dialog Manager API, let's go through the code. So we'll jump into Visual Studio Code, and then we are going to use 2 main libraries here. The first one is the Telegraph library to interact with Telegram, and the second one is Axios, which will allow us to make the Dialog Manager API calls. Let's click on dialog-manager-api.ts. This code is built in TypeScript, but you can create your own client in the code or the language of your choosing, since of course this is an API. Now this is our Axios client, which we are going to use to interact with the API. And then here in index.ts, we have the interaction between Telegram and Voiceflow using the Dialog Manager API. Let's now scroll up. Here, the first thing that we need to do is create a new Telegraph object in order to start our Telegram bot. Now, if we go down here, we have two main methods, the bot.start and the bot.heres. The bot.start is really important because it helps us start the interaction. So for that, as you can see, we need to send a request with the type launch. Before sending that request, which is a request to interact with the Dialog Manager API, we have to get the client. To get the client, we are going to get an instance of the HTTP client. For that, we're going to need the Voiceflow API key, the Voiceflow version ID, and the runtime endpoint. Now, after sending the launch request, we're going to manage the response. And so next, we need to scroll down to bot.heres. This is one of the most important methods in the index.ts because it will hear all the messages that come from Telegram. Once again, it's important to note that every message that we receive, we are sending a request with the type text, and the payload is the text that we receive directly from Telegram. After this, we have the client.do interaction, which is a call to the Dialog Manager API. And then below that is how we manage the response. Setting up the response is really easy because it's exactly the same as our Dialog Manager SDK. What happens here is we are going to receive a list of traces. Now, what are traces? They are a list of blocks that are going to execute on Voiceflow. For this, we only need to iterate on the traces that we have received from the Dialog Manager API. Depending on the trace type, we need to reply using the proper response. So for example, if we are going to receive a text, the proper response or trace type would be speak. If we receive another kind of trace, for example, if we are going to receive an audio clip or a visual, we'll need to reply to Telegram using the proper message, or in this case, reply with audio or reply with photo. Okay, great. Let's now test this experience so we can see it in action. So here we are in our Telegram bot, and if we start the conversation here, we're calling the bot.start method, and as you can see, we get the message, welcome to Voiceflow. And if we go ahead and trigger the hello world intent by typing hi, what will happen is we'll receive a response from the chatbot, so hello Flowster, accompanied by a visual and an audio clip. Awesome. So that's how you can successfully build a Telegram bot using Voiceflow's Dialog Manager API. I hope this gives you a better understanding of how you can utilize our Dialog Manager API to bring Voiceflow conversations into your very own interfaces and products. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, you can find all of the code on Voiceflow's GitHub, which we've linked to in the description.